wake up, and you already know the time before you look at the clock. Somewhere between 2:30 and 3:30 in the morning, every night, you come fully awake, not groggy, alert, too alert. Your mind engages immediately. You begin to think about things that have no resolution at 3 in the morning. You lie there for 40 minutes, an hour, sometimes longer, watching the ceiling and trying to convince yourself back to sleep. Eventually, you drift off, but the sleep that follows is nothing like what came before. And by morning, you feel as though you never fully rested. You've told yourself this is just how sleep works after 60. That light sleep is inevitable, that the body needs less rest as it ages. I need to tell you that those explanations, while commonly offered, are missing the most important part of the story. The 3 in the morning awakening is not a random sleep complaint. It is not simply a consequence of an aging bladder or a vivid dream. For a significant proportion of adults over 60 who experience it nightly, not occasionally, but habitually, it represents a specific disruption of the brain's most important maintenance window. A window that, when chronically interrupted, has measurable and documented consequences for the same biological processes that determine long-term Alzheimer's risk. The timing of 3 in the morning is not coincidental. It corresponds with precision to a specific phase in the brain's nocturnal activity, a phase that the research of the last decade has identified as critical in ways that were not understood even 15 years ago. I am going to explain exactly what is happening in your brain during that window, why its interruption matters as much as it does, and what the most common correctable causes of this specific pattern are in adults over 60. My name is Dr. Ellison. I've practiced neurology for 23 years with a focus on cognitive aging and memory disorders. Sleep disruption in older adults is one of the most frequent cognitive complaints I encounter, and also one of the most incompletely addressed. The response, some sleep fragmentation is normal with age, is not wrong. It is dangerously incomplete because it shuts down a conversation that, for a meaningful number of patients, would have identified something correctable and done something about it. I want to be precise about what I'm not claiming today. Waking occasionally in the night is universal. Waking briefly and returning to sleep is a normal feature of adult sleep architecture at any age. What I am specifically addressing is the habitual to nightly awakening that occurs in the second half of sleep, typically between 2 and 4 in the morning, with a sustained period of full wakefulness that disrupts the remainder of the night on a regular basis. That pattern, in an adult over 60, deserves more than reassurance. It deserves an explanation, and in most cases I have seen clinically, it has one, a specific, identifiable, treatable one. To understand why 3 in the morning is the specific vulnerability point, you need to understand how sleep architecture changes after 60, and this is something almost no one outside sleep medicine has been told. Healthy adult sleep cycles through stages roughly every 90 minutes throughout the night, but those stages are not evenly distributed across the night. They follow a pattern. The first half of the night is dominated by slow-wave sleep, the deepest, most restorative stage, during which the brain's physical maintenance processes are most active. The second half of the night shifts toward lighter sleep and REM sleep, the stage characterized by vivid dreaming and rapid eye movement. In younger adults, slow-wave sleep is robust, sustained, and occupies a substantial portion of the first 2 to 3 sleep cycles. By the time someone reaches their mid-60s, slow-wave sleep has typically decreased by 40 to 60% compared to young adulthood. The brain front-loads what slow-wave sleep remains into the first few hours of the night. By 2 to 3 in the morning, most of the night's slow-wave sleep quota has been exhausted, and the brain transitions to the lighter REM-dominant sleep that characterizes the second half of the night. REM sleep is lighter than slow-wave sleep. It is more easily interrupted, and the arousal threshold during REM, the ease with which any internal or external signal can pull the brain from sleep to wakefulness, is significantly lower than during slow-wave sleep. which means that 3 in the morning is, for an adult over 60, precisely the window in which the brain is most vulnerable to any arousal stimulus. A slight noise, a mild pain, a shift in room temperature, a subtle drop in blood sugar, a brief respiratory event. Any of these at 3 in the morning does what the same stimulus could not do at 11. It wakes you completely and keeps you awake because the slow wave pressure that would pull you back into deep sleep has already been spent. This is the architecture. Now, let me tell you why what happens during this window matters more than the lost rest itself. In 2017, researchers publishing in Science documented something that should have been front-page news for every person over 60 in the country. Amyloid-beta, the protein whose abnormal accumulation is one of the defining pathological features of Alzheimer's disease, follows a precise circadian rhythm in the brain's interstitial fluid. It rises during wakefulness as neuronal activity generates it continuously. It falls during sleep as the glymphatic system clears it, and its rate of clearance is not constant across the night. It accelerates in the second half of sleep, during the REM dense, slow wave depleted window that begins for most adults over 60 at approximately 2 to 3 in the morning. The period from 2 to 4 in the morning is, by the current evidence, the brain's peak amyloid clearance window. This is not the same as the general statement that sleep enables amyloid clearance, which is true and has been known for a decade. This is specific to timing. The clearance rate is highest during the window that habitual early morning awakening interrupts most consistently. A study published in Nature Neuroscience followed adults over 65 and measured CSF amyloid levels under different sleep conditions. Participants who experienced habitual fragmentation in the second half of sleep, specifically the window from 2 to 4 in the morning, showed significantly higher amyloid burden compared to those with consolidated second-half sleep, independent of total sleep time. It was not simply the hours, it was the specific interruption of the clearance peak window. Waking at 3 in the morning and remaining awake for an hour does not simply steal an hour of rest. It interrupts the period during which the brain is working hardest to clear the protein whose accumulation defines Alzheimer's disease. Night after night, year after year. And here is what makes this correctable. For most adults over 60 who experience this pattern, there is a specific cause, not aging in the abstract, but a specific and treatable mechanism, often more than one. Cause 1, REM-Phase, sleep apnea. Most people who know they have sleep apnea think of it as snoring and daytime fatigue. But sleep apnea has a specific relationship with sleep architecture that makes it disproportionately damaging to the second half of the night in adults over 60. Obstructive sleep apnea events, the brief pauses in breathing that characterize the condition, become more frequent during REM sleep. The muscle relaxation that defines REM sleep makes the upper airway more collapsible, which means that someone with moderate sleep apnea who may sleep through the first few hours of the night relatively undisturbed during the slow wave dominant first half will experience a dramatic increase in apneic events during the REM heavy second half. The result is a cascade of brief arousals in the 2 to 4 in the morning window that fully wake the person and prevent return to the deeper sleep stages that have already been exhausted. What distinguishes this pattern from the general sleep apnea discussion is its timing specificity. If you are waking habitually at 3 in the morning, not with a sensation of choking or gasping, but simply coming fully awake without clear cause, REM-phase apnea is among the most likely causes. And a sleep study that specifically measures REM-phase apneic events, not only total apneic index, is the diagnostic tool that identifies it. Cause 2, nocturnal blood sugar instability. Between 2 and 4 in the morning, blood glucose reaches a nadir in most adults, the lowest point of its overnight trajectory. In younger adults, the counter-regulatory hormone response to this nadir is smooth and well-calibrated. In older adults, particularly those with insulin resistance, metabolic syndrome, or who ate a high glycemic dinner, the counter-regulatory cortisol and adrenaline release can overshoot, producing a hormonal surge that is sufficient to interrupt sleep without any respiratory cause. This mechanism is particularly relevant for adults who eat a large carbohydrate-heavy dinner within 2 hours of bedtime. The resulting blood sugar spike and subsequent crash follows a curve that bottoms out precisely in the 3 a.m. window. The brain, detecting the glucose drop, triggers the hormonal alarm that produces awakening. Alt cause 3, core body temperature dysregulation. Sleep onset and maintenance are dependent on a fall in core body temperature. The body sheds heat to the periphery as sleep deepens, and maintaining a cool core is essential to sustaining the lighter sleep stages of the second half of the night. After 60, the thermoregulatory mechanisms that govern this core temperature drop become less efficient. Sleeping environments that are too warm or bedding that traps too much heat create a thermal environment that prevents the maintained temperature drop the second half of the night requires. The result is arousal from light sleep at the point when the thermal regulatory burden exceeds the system's capacity. Cause 4, cortisol rhythm disruption from chronic stress history. The hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, the system governing cortisol production, has its own circadian rhythm, with cortisol at its lowest point around 2 to 3 in the morning and beginning its pre-dawn ascent around 4. In adults with a history of chronic stress, long-term insomnia, or dysregulated HPA axis function, this pre-dawn cortisol rise can begin earlier and ascend more steeply than the normal pattern. The result is a cortisol-driven awakening that is not triggered by an external event, but by the body's own hormonal clock running ahead of schedule. Let me tell you about a patient I'll call Miriam. She was 71 years old, a retired librarian who had, by her description, been an excellent sleeper for most of her adult life. Reliable, restorative, predictable sleep. Then, over the course of about 18 months, the 3 a.m. awakening arrived and never left. She came to see me not specifically because of the sleep. She had been told repeatedly that sleep changes with age, and she had accepted that resignedly. She came because her processing speed at work had become noticeably slower, and because she was finding sustained reading, her lifelong source of deepest pleasure, increasingly difficult to sustain beyond 30 or 40 minutes without losing the thread. When I took her sleep history in detail, on the 3 a.m. pattern emerged with a precision that told me immediately it was not random. Every night, between 2:45 and 3:15. Full awakening, sustained for 60 to 90 minutes. Light, restless sleep until her alarm. No sensation of breathing difficulty. No obvious anxiety trigger. Just alertness, sudden and complete, at the wrong hour. We arranged a polysomnography, a full overnight sleep study with detailed staging and respiratory monitoring. Her AHI, the number of apneic events per hour overall, was in the mild range and would not have triggered a clinical intervention based on that number alone. But when the data was broken down by sleep stage, the picture was dramatically different. During REM sleep, her apnea-hypopnea index was severe. On the apneic events clustering in the REM-heavy second half of her night were producing precisely the pattern of brief fragmenting arousals that had been pulling her from sleep and keeping her awake from 3 a.m. onward. She began CPAP therapy. Within 10 nights, she sent me a message. The 3 a.m. awakening had stopped, not reduced, stopped. At her 4-month follow-up, her processing speed scores had returned to age-expected norms. Her reading stamina was fully restored. She told me, "I had been grieving this for a year and a half. I thought it was age. I thought I had to accept it. It was a breathing problem in a sleep stage that nobody had bothered to look at. The test had been available. The question had not been asked with sufficient specificity. First, track the pattern for 2 weeks before your next appointment. Write down every morning the time you woke during the night, how long you were awake, what you ate for dinner, and how close to bedtime, and your room temperature. 2 weeks of this data transforms a vague complaint into clinical information. The pattern, the consistency, the timing, the potential correlations with dinner composition or room temperature is the most valuable thing you can bring to a physician. Second, ask specifically about REM-Phase sleep apnea by name, not just, do I have sleep apnea? A mild overall AHI score can miss severe REM-Phase apnea entirely. Ask, if I have a sleep study, can the results be analyzed specifically for apneic events during REM sleep, and can I see those numbers separately? That question, to put directly to a sleep physician, changes what the evaluation looks for and therefore what it finds. Third, change your dinner composition for 2 weeks as a diagnostic experiment. Remove high glycemic carbohydrates from the meal closest to bedtime. No white rice, white bread, pasta, or sugary foods within 3 hours of sleep. Add a small amount of protein to the last thing you eat before bed. A small handful of nuts, a piece of cheese, a boiled egg. This is not a dietary recommendation for all contexts. It is a targeted intervention for the nocturnal glucose mechanism, and it is reversible and diagnostic. If your 3 in the morning awakening decreases in frequency or duration, you have identified a contributing cause. Fourth, optimize your sleeping environment temperature. The target room temperature for optimal second-half sleep maintenance is between 65 and 68 degrees Fahrenheit, cooler than most people keep their bedrooms. If thermal regulation is a contributing factor to your awakenings, this change produces results within 3 to 5 nights. Reducing bedding weight rather than room temperature achieves the same goal for those who cannot control room temperature independently. 3 in the morning is not a random hour at which aging happens to disrupt sleep. It is the hour at which the brain's architecture becomes most vulnerable. When slow-wave sleep has been spent, when REM is dominant, when any arousal stimulus finds a nervous system that is ready to be pulled to wakefulness and reluctant to return. It is also the hour of peak amyloid clearance velocity, the window when your brain is working hardest, if you let it, to clear the protein whose accumulation is the physical definition of Alzheimer's pathology. Interrupting that window, habitual, nightly, has measurable consequences that are not simply a matter of feeling tired. Miriam had been accepting this for 18 months as the cost of getting older. The cost was real. The acceptance was unnecessary. Most of the adults I see with this specific pattern have a specific cause. A respiratory issue concentrated in REM sleep, a blood sugar curve shaped by dinner timing, a room that is too warm, a cortisol system running ahead of schedule. None of these is aging. All of them are addressable. What time do you typically wake at night, and how long have you accepted it as simply what 60 plus feels like? Tell me in the comments, because the number of people carrying this unnecessarily without the information that would change it is larger than any of us in this field should be comfortable with. Your brain is doing its most important work between 2 and 4 in the morning. It deserves to be allowed to finish. All content in this video reflects published sleep neuroscience research and over 2 decades of clinical practice. Sleep disorders require formal clinical evaluation. Please consult your physician before making significant changes to your sleep environment or medication regimen. Sleep apnea, in particular, should be formally assessed and treated under medical supervision. The mechanisms described here are population-level findings. Individual presentations vary and require individualized evaluation.